Hello and welcome to the Survivor League breakdown for Week 10. I am your host, Josh Shepardson, and you can follow me on Twitter where I post is at BChat50. And let's jump right into things. The first game of the week is a Thursday night football contest between a couple of AFC East division rivals, the Buffalo Bills and New York Jets. The Bills travel to New Jersey to play the New York Jets at MetLife Stadium. The Jets are a 2.5-point favorite. But basically, that 2.5-point spread tells you that that is the home favorite, and this is pretty darn close to a pick 'em. As you can see in the background, I have quite a bit of Bills memorabilia and things of that nature, so probably a little bit biased in saying that I do slightly prefer the Bills here. They just look like a considerably different team with Tyrod Taylor under center. Really, they've only lost one game with him starting at quarterback. Or I'm sorry, 2 games with him starting at quarterback. One to the Giants and one to the Patriots. Terribly better though with him playing and E.J. Manuel riding the pine as he should. They looked good last week with their healthy complement of players: Sammy Watkins, Carlos Williams, and both defenses are good. Give the edge to the Jets in terms of run defense. And it's hard to argue with Revis Island out there at corner as well. But I think offensively the Bills have a sizable edge. And the fact that Chris Ivory just isn't picking up yardage at the clip that he was earlier in the year should be a little bit alarming for Jets fans. The Bills do have a good front seven that can keep the run in check. So slightly prefer the Bills, but to be honest, I would just prefer stay away from that game if possible. But if I am picking a team, I'm going to take the Bills. But again, I don't have strong convictions in that pick. Next up is one of the 2 elite plays of the week. Probably a team that you've already burned, but maybe not. If you're still alive, it means you didn't use them either of the last 2 weeks. That's the Green Bay Packers as 11-point favorites at home against their division rival Detroit Lions. Lions have been lost this year. Packers lost a couple of tough games, one at Denver, one at Carolina. At the time, Denver was undefeated. Last week, Carolina undefeated, and they remain undefeated. So 2 tough opponents, 2 opponents that really are exactly what the Packers don't want to face, and that's elite pass defenses. Both the Broncos and the Panthers rank 1-2 respectively in net yards passing allowed per attempt. So when you're a pass-happy team like the Packers, that is just a nightmarish situation. Had a feverish comeback, nearly pulled off the improbable comeback against the Panthers last week. Aaron Rodgers picked off on a play that they were near the goal line, down by 8. Had they scored, they still would have needed a 2-point conversion to tie it up, but definitely showed some fight down the stretch. Had a nice finish to last week's game, even though they came out on the wrong side of things. Lions have been hapless this year. I have no idea what Jim Caldwell's squad is doing, and I expect them to firmly get waxed by the Packers this week. Next up is Dallas traveling to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, where they are 2-point underdogs against the host Bucs. Again, like the Bills-Jets game, that spread is pretty much indicative of home field. Played on a neutral field, this would more or less be a pick 'em. The Bucs, Jameis Winston's taken care of the football in the last 4 games. I'll say that. Hasn't thrown an interception in any of those 4 contests. As long as the Cowboys are led by Matt Castle, it's difficult to get too excited about them. But he did get the ball to Dez Bryant last week. Dez made an unbelievable touchdown grab and showed off why he is one of the elite receivers in the game. So Dez is a game changer. Darren McFadden is really stepped up in a big way in the backfield. But if I'm taking a team here, it is going to be the host Bucs. But not a game that I prefer pick from because I don't have strong convictions on this game. But I think there's just a little bit more talent on the Bucs. I have more faith in Jameis Winston than Matt Castle, which the fact that that's a thing to discuss right now is kind of remarkable that Matt Castle's even in that position. But I would ever so slightly take the Bucs this week. But again, I think you've got some other options that you can pick from. Even in Week 10, I think you've got some stronger games to choose from. Next up is the Carolina Panthers visiting the Tennessee Titans, where they enter as a 5.5-point favorite on the road. Marcus Mariota looked good, orchestrating a win in overtime against the New Orleans Saints last week at New Orleans, and they return home this week. And Mariota is a considerably better quarterback than second-year man Zach Mettenberger, but he's going to have his hands full against the Carolina Panthers. Kendall Wright still isn't practicing. That's a big weapon to be down for the Titans. I like the visiting Panthers quite a bit here. They are one of the stronger plays that I have. I'd say there's there's 5 teams that I like just below that elite cut of the Packers and the forthcoming mystery team. But the Panthers are in that next tier of teams that I feel very comfortable picking. I think they're going to give Mariota trouble. I don't think the Titans have the type of running attack to really cause problems for the Panthers, and I don't think the defense is. It's decent. It's middle of the pack, but I don't think they are going to be able to take away Cam Newton. And I mean, Cam's been a one-man show. They've struggled with defending tight ends, and Greg Olsen is easily his top target. So I do like the Panthers here. Next up is the Bears traveling to St. Louis to face the Rams. The Rams are 7.5-point favorites, and the Rams lost a close one in overtime against the Vikings last week. Todd Gurley's stretch of 125-plus yard rushing games came to an end, but he's still strong again, and that's going to be a problem for the Bears this week. Bears are allowing one of the highest yards per carry totals in the league, and while they haven't given up a lot of touchdowns and they haven't been completely burned by that yet, they're really going to be put to the test this week. Rams have been force-feeding Todd Gurley the ball, as they should. Another 20-plus carries or touches for Gurley. It's going to show him a pretty big game against the Bears. I don't think the Bears have an answer for him. I think the Rams' defense is maybe not elite, but pretty darn close to it. You can get after the quarterback. Jay Cutler's done a much better job of taking care of the football this year than he has in years past. Adam Gase really getting a lot out of him this year, but they're down Forte still. Jeremy Langford looked good in relief last week for him, but I just don't think they have enough weapons. Alshon Jeffrey can get his, and the Rams can still take away enough of the rest of the Bears to make it really tough to keep up with Todd Gurley, and maybe they do take Jeffrey away too. I mean, Jeffrey's clearly the top option in that game, and the Rams do have talent. So on the defensive side of the ball, so really like the Rams here. They are another play in that same tier as the Panthers, just below that elite cut. Next up is the Saints traveling to the Redskins, just a 1-point spread. The Saints are 1-point favorites. They can't seem to defend anybody, but if ever there were a week for that defense to step up, it would be against Kirk Cousins. I'm sure Kirk Cousins doesn't like me saying that, but not exactly a premier quarterback, not the type of guy who can, who's really typically going to punish defenses. Maybe he'll punish the Saints defense just because they are so terrible, but I think Drew Brees ends up getting the better of this matchup. I like Mark Ingram. I like the skill players for the Saints better than those for the Redskins. And I think ultimately the Saints win a shootout. And again, not strong convictions on that game, but I actually feel better about this taking the Saints than taking some of these slightly bigger favorites like the 2-point favorite Bucks and or the Jets or Bills in that game. So if we're stacking them up, I'll take the Saints against the Redskins, and I'll take the Saints coming out on top. Next up is the Eagles hosting the Dolphins. The Eagles are 6.5-point favorites, and they won a overtime thriller against the Cowboys last week, and they're facing the suddenly reeling Dolphins again. Dan Campbell really had Dolphins fired up coming out of the bye week, but they've come back to earth over the last 2 weeks, getting stomped by the New England Patriots and by the Buffalo Bills. The Eagles' defense is very good. They've established the run with DeMarco Murray, Ryan Matthews, and the Dolphins not a great run defense. So I think this sets up favorably for the Eagles to establish the run, play good defense, and win, possibly even covering the spread. But I think they definitely win this one. I don't think there's going to be much of a sweat in this contest. Dolphins, Tannehill looked good in his first few games out of the bye, getting away with dinking and dunking. I think the Eagles will take that away. And I also don't think that the Dolphins have a true number one receiver to really exploit Byron Maxwell and that Eagles secondary. The Eagles secondary has been good with the exception of defending number ones. And yes, Jarvis Landry is the clear-cut top receiver for the Dolphins, but he's not your bigger physical specimen type of number one. He's a guy who does a lot of damage out of the slot, does a lot of damage on returns and jet sweeps and things of that nature. So not the type of guy that I think is really going to give the Eagles a ton of problems. And I'll take the Eagles at home this week. Next up is another division battle between the Browns and Steelers in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's a 4.5-point favorite, despite the fact that Big Ben is almost certainly out this week. He's not ruling himself out yet with the midfoot sprain, but the Steelers are on bye next week. There's no reason for them to rush him back. They need to get him healthy. And Landry Jones is the man that should fill in here. But really, it's going to be the D'Angelo Williams show against a bad Browns run defense. And Josh McCown expected to start, but I don't think it's going to matter. Steelers defense has been okay this year. But I think that coupled with D'Angelo Williams really just running all over that porous run defense of the Browns is going to be enough for the Steelers to hold on and get a victory at home. They're not quite in that cut below the elite plays. They're a little bit below that. They're usable, but anytime you're dealing with a backup quarterback that's as inexperienced as Landry Jones, I don't feel super comfortable pushing my chips in the middle with him. But again, if we're going to stack them up, I'll take the Steelers at home over the Browns as opposed to the Saints on the road against the Redskins, just to kind of give you an idea of where I'm stacking these games up. Next up is the Jaguars traveling to the Ravens. Jaguars 5.5-point underdogs on the road against Baltimore. Now, this is Baltimore without Steve Smith Sr., and they're coming off the bye, and we haven't seen them without their number one receiver. 5.5-point spread seems a little bit high for a team that has struggled to defend receivers, and Jacksonville has a nice little combination of the Allens going nuts this year, Allen Robinson and Allen Hurns. Blake Bortles has made strides this year. They have a capable running back and rookie TJ Yeldon. This seems like a trap game to me if you're just picking by spread, and Ravens probably one of those teams that some of these survivors still have since, for starters, they haven't won a lot of games this year. So if you've been using the Ravens, then you'd be gone at this point. But I think this has trap game written all over it. If I were to bet on this game, I would take the points with the Jaguars, take a straight up. Odds makers know a little bit more than I do, so the Ravens should be considered the better bet to win, trusting the odds makers. But this is not a game I feel comfortable in at all. Again, stacking things up again, I would take the Saints beating the Redskins as before I took Baltimore as a 5.5-point favorite beating the Jaguars this week. So I think this spread's a little bit out of whack by my estimations. I think Bortles can do enough to keep Jacksonville close and maybe win this game. Next up is another game that should be close, another game that I really would try to avoid at all costs, and that's Minnesota traveling to Oakland to face the Raiders. Minnesota coming off of that tough victory against the Rams in overtime. Derek Carr looking like another quarterback who's making huge strides in year two, much like Blake Bortles. He's been excellent this year. He actually has two excellent pass catchers and Michael Crabtree and Amari Cooper, something he didn't have last year. I like the Raiders just a little bit here as the 3-point favorites. I think they have enough offensive firepower to outduel the defensive-minded Minnesota Vikings. I also think they have just enough to keep Adrian Peterson in check. All indications are that Teddy Bridgewater should be a go despite suffering what looked like a pretty ugly concussion last week on a personal foul where he slid and got absolutely cracked. But all indications are that Teddy Bridgewater should be a go. I just don't think that they're going to go into Oakland and get this W. I think it's going to be a tough one to pick up on the road. I like the Raiders a little bit. And again, going back to the stacking up the bottom of the barrel teams, I'll take the Raiders before I take the Saints, and I'll take the Saints before I take the Ravens. So Raiders, not quite. I don't like them quite as much as the Steelers, but they're right in that fringe mix of usable teams. Next up, we got Kansas City traveling to Denver. Broncos looking to rebound from a loss to Indianapolis, their first of the season at Indy. They're going to be without Aqib Talib. They're going to also be without DeMarcus Ware. And that said, they're still 5.5-point favorites. They're tough as nails at home. Their defense is excellent. The Chiefs are the most giving, at least from a fantasy perspective, defense to wide receivers. So with a couple of really good wide receivers in Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, it's going to be a tough matchup for them to win. I like the Broncos here pretty comfortably. I think they cover the spread. I think they're one of the elite plays, not quite elite plays, I'm sorry, just a cut below the elite play. We still got one more elite play left to go. Surprisingly, that's not the next team. That's New England traveling to New York to face the Giants. They are 7.5-point favorites. It is a road contest, though, and while I don't have any concerns based on Super Bowls past or any nonsense like that. They are going to be adjusting to life without Dion Lewis, who suffered an ACL injury last week, and somehow Tom Coughlin does tend to keep these games with the Patriots close when they're not supposed to be. Eli Manning occasionally shows up in these contests, so there are enough playmakers on the Giants that I don't quite feel comfortable putting New England in that elite category with the Packers and the forthcoming elite team, which at this point you've probably figured out, but I do definitely feel comfortable putting them in that next tier, probably at the top of that next tier. It's a really strong play in your survivor pools, but I'll take New England here to beat the Giants on the road. Next up might be the most entertaining game of the week, but one that I would avoid like the plague, and that's Arizona, 3-point underdogs on the road against Seattle, going to face the 12th man and the Seahawks. And Seahawks defense has been elite this year. Cardinals offense has been elite this year. And if we're comparing weak sides of the football, the Cardinals get the better end of things as their defense is really good, and the Seahawks offense really has not been good. But the game is in Seattle, and it is very tough to go into Seattle and get a win. That said, I like the Cardinals here ever so slightly. But again, this is not a game that I want any part of touching. The Seahawks cannot keep Russell Wilson upright. The Cardinals don't have a great pass rush, but they do have the type of offense that can put a couple scores on the board and force the Seahawks into catch-up mode if a few things break right. And if Russell Wilson is stuck dropping back in predictable situations, then I do expect the Cardinals to put him on his backside. If this game stays close and it's a battle of the defenses, you got to like Seattle at home. But this is a game that I just assume avoid from a Survivor League standpoint. But from a watching standpoint, this might be the game of the week. And finally, we got the Monday Night Football contest featuring our last elite play of the game or of the week, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals as 10.5-point home favorites and undefeated against the Houston Texans. Texans without Arian Foster, not exactly breaking news as Foster's been missed the Texans' last contest before the bye week and is out for the rest of the year. But that puts a lot of pressure on Brian Hoyer in that passing attack. And the Bengals have done a good job of getting after quarterbacks this year. They're a very well-rounded, very talented team on both sides of the ball at all levels. And it's hard to imagine the Bengals having a letdown at home and picking up their first loss of the year at home against a team that they should be and they are big favorites against. So that's going to wrap things up for this week. If you're still alive in your survivor pools, congratulations for making it this far. Get through another week and survive in advance. Until next week, good luck and win some matchups this week.